Hello, and welcome to episode 138 of Sutro Sidetalk. I'm your host, Kamran Shushtar, and with me is...
James Seelig.
And we are also joined by an awesome guest, Andreas.
How's it going, guys?
Dude, how are you doing?
Very good. It's on this fine morning.
The reason we got him here is because we are doing an episode on the Book of Boba Fett, which just pretty much finished up this past week. And if you want to talk a little bit about yourself, tell us where you're from.
Sure thing. I'm a native Floridian, and I am a narrative designer in the themed entertainment industry. So typically that's a job that is seen in the games industry, but because I do interactive entertainment within theme parks, that's kind of how I bridge the gap between the two worlds.
Awesome, man.
That's super cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very fun and very daunting sometimes because it's like, oh, I don't just have to go into Unity or Unreal and make this story work. I got to do it in real life, and it's very, very fun.
Real life stories. That's what I like to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Otherwise, James, how is your week going?
Pretty good. Usual work stuff, but also just like I went back to play Frozen Wilds. I talked about that last week. I finally finished it, and it's a good DLC. And I'm super hyped for Forbidden West coming out like literally this next week.
Mm-hmm.
I actually yesterday started New Game Plus for.
So did I.
Yeah, I was like, I'm just gonna run through it fast.
Yeah, I don't think I'll get through it, but I'm just like, oh, what am I gonna do in the meantime? Play more Destiny?
True.
I probably will.
Andreas, have you been playing? Did you play Horizon?
I played it for a bit. The PC release was quite strong. Really, really, really nice. Like beautiful, beautiful stuff.
Nice.
So yeah.
It is pretty hot today in February in San Francisco, which shouldn't be like this, but
Yeah,
whatever.
dude, I hate it.
It's too hot for February. It's crazy.
It's like 60 degrees. I'm like, nah, I can't do it.
It's getting close. It's been like 70s the last couple days, and I think it'll be like that again later today at like in like 2 hours probably. But
I'm not a fan.
Meanwhile, it's 80 degrees here. So
that's the thing. Like living
humid heat.
Yeah, living in the Bay Area just like ruins your ability to deal with weather in general.
It's funny. When we went to the Disney World Universal trip in September, the Brandons and everyone else we were with were complaining about the humidity. They were like, I can't deal with this. And I'm just there like, this is fine. I'm used to this. I was here for 4 years. And
Exactly.
I go and tell you, and I'm like, dude, like no one can handle it. It's crazy.
It doesn't feel like true Pandora if you're not sweating bullets and getting eaten by mosquitoes, you know?
That is very true. Very true.
Sounds like a fun time.
Yeah. Fun thing is, like in my I close everything off here, so all the air is cut off, which is why it turns into like a heat box for the next like hour to an hour and a half. And then the minute we stop recording, I'm like, oh my god, open the window, open the door,
Fans
open
on.
everything. Yeah, it's just killer. But you know, this week, guys, like I said, Book of Boba Fett. We also got a couple news pieces with another follow-up. I know we've been talking about a lot of acquisitions lately, but it's more of a follow-up on the Activision Blizzard Xbox side for Call of Duty. And then we got the Jurassic World Dominion trailer, which we'll talk about as well. And then the rest of the month, it's looking very television related because we couldn't do this and Demon Slayer Entertainment District in the same episode. That's too much. So that'll be next week. And then we'll do some Ted Lasso, Rick and Morty season 5 later on, followed by probably Horizon and Witch Queen with a review of season Lost as well. So a lot to talk about, but that's kind of what it's looking like pretty much the rest of February and probably early March as well. With that said, of course, this is Sutro Sidetalk. Every week we talk about what we've been playing and watching, as well as a couple news pieces here and there. Ready to jump into the news, you guys?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Right. And 5-minute timer on for this one. But first off, we got the follow-up, like I said, Activision and Xbox, or I guess more so Microsoft has announced that even after the current deals that Activision has with Sony, Call of Duty will remain multi-platform even longer. And not only that, but they plan on expanding Call of Duty to the Nintendo Switch. So
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, that one of the reasons I didn't expect Call of Duty to go exclusive to Xbox is just like there's no way they would make more money off of selling Xbox hardware with exclusive Call of Duty titles than they would selling to PlayStation, let alone also Nintendo now. So it just makes sense they would try to sell it to as many people as possible because that player base is just huge every year.
not
Absolutely.
to mention, Xbox sales are going to plummet pretty soon for Call of Duty.
Why?
Like Game Pass, if it's on Game Pass, they're not going to buy it
Oh.
anymore.
Yeah, but then they
So-
get all that Game Pass subscription
It's
money
very true. They're going
every
to get
month.
an uptick in Game Pass Ultimate probably, and then they'll still get all the PlayStation money, all the microtransactions from that, the season battle passes. I don't know anymore which one's which anymore. And then if they do that for Nintendo, that's even more moolah. So there that goes. Plus, I'm kind of curious. Like, I know when Sony bought Bungie, I'm pretty sure the agreement was like Bungie was like, we get to stay multi-platform before they even could go through with the deal.
And full cross-platform as well. It was part of the deal.
Yeah, and I feel like also this was a good like, hey, Microsoft, we're doing this, so you should also
maybe.
I think it's a small thing, but I don't know if it's that's absolute, but it definitely feels like, hey, we can, if we keep buying stuff, we don't necessarily have to stay exclusive anymore.
Like, yeah, I guess it's totally in line with their no
worries,
kind of business strategy of being for the people, kind of by the people. It's like, if you're going to make this big move, it's always about goodwill for Microsoft, and they've been slowly building that up year after year, and it's paying off dividends now for them. So I don't see why not. Another thing I wanted to bring up with the Switch news is I think a lot of people forget that with the acquisition of Activision, they now have all their mobile games, and Call of Duty Mobile is one of the biggest earners in the entire world every year. So I think the Switch version will probably be that one, because that is optimized for mobile platforms.
That would make so much sense.
That makes absolute sense.
Yeah, it's a good game too. I honestly think it's better than the Call of Duty on console. It's very good.
I have it on my phone. I downloaded it when it first came out, and I was like, wow, this is actually really good.
Yeah,
shockingly good.
Crazy.
I haven't read the article. There's an article I think about like Infinity Ward saying they are disappointed with how Warzone turned out. So I guess that would make sense why mobile would be potentially.
And why they're making Warzone 2.
Yeah.
Rumors.
One thing too, it's funny because like, oh, that makes a lot more sense that it didn't even cross my mind that mobile could appear on the Switch, because also, we're not talking about it this week just because there's too much other stuff, and maybe next week depending on how things go. But the Nintendo Direct, like, they showed a bunch of, they're like, look at all these games we're getting, and it's like, dude, wasn't that on PS3 and 360? Like,
exactly.
thank you for bringing these in 10 years later.
That gives you a real look at what the hardware can do.
Yeah,
it kind of has those limitations, but mobile games and mobile engines, like I'm pretty sure Call of Duty's made in Unity, like the optimization paths that you can take, I know from firsthand experience, are pretty incredible. So I think we're going to see that a lot more in the future, of just like, if I'm going to make a game for mobile, it's ready for Switch and PC as well.
Yeah.
And wasn't for Fortnite on Switch, just as an example, is that crossplay with mobile, or is that crossplay with consoles?
It's crossplay with everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, they still, okay. I wasn't sure if they did like a separate crossplay.
You can't play Fortnite on mobile anymore because of all the legal troubles they went
through. Oh, that's right.
Well, I know it's not on iStore. Is it on? Did they take it off of Android too?
Both of them have issues.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic.
Oh my god.
About that.
That's fine. All right. But I'm excited for this. Like I said, I haven't really, I've said previous episodes, I haven't touched Call of Duty. I haven't installed everything ever since all that stuff happened. But all the allegations and everything else, I haven't touched a thing. But if they fix everything and everything else, I'd probably be playing on PC still. And if it's on PC Game Pass, that's probably the route I'm just going to go. And if it's crossplay still, win-win there. If needed, I can get it on PS5, but I doubt I'd do that just because I just have it on PC. So that works for me personally. Next up, guys, we got that beautiful, extravagant Jurassic World Dominion trailer, which
it was interesting.
Showed us a lot.
Yeah.
I was not expecting to want to see this one after
Comedy
Fallen
of the year,
Kingdom.
Fallen Kingdom.
Yeah, which is just like, what is this movie?
Where's my bonus? I'm gonna take this too.
They got me when Alan Grant and the other scientist showed up.
Ellie Sattler.
Ellie, her name was Ellie. For some reason, I thought I was wrong on that, but I was just like, oh my god, they're all coming back. Yeah, I'm totally in. I don't know. It still looks fun.
It's interesting because it feels like, you know, at the end of Fallen Kingdom, they're like, oh look, we let out like a dozen dinosaurs, and then now it's like, oh,
No,
we've
just
multiplied
everywhere.
and there's like new species we didn't even have there that are just like all over the place. We got the feathered dinos now, which is kind of crazy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate because this concept for this film specifically is so strong that I feel like the whole trilogy should have been around this.
Yeah.
Of a post-apocalyptic world overrun by dinosaurs.
That would have been so much cooler.
Cool, right? So I'm like, I kind of see this as almost like a Halo Infinite situation where they're starting something, even though they're saying that they're ending another trilogy. It feels like a beginning of something new, and I really do feel like they're probably going to wipe the slate clean. No more Chris Pratt, no more old characters, but we'll see a movie that's a sequel to this eventually.
Yeah,
for sure.
Especially like I think they even said like, oh, this isn't the end of the franchise. We're going even further from there. And
you think they could do like a show?
Yeah, TV's probably the way
like
to go.
Set in like a world where there's just like dinosaurs all over the place.
Walking Dead's about to end, so it's a perfect time to take that kind of slot over.
Just curious where it would go, because it's like it would be Peacock, and I'm like, how many people are going to watch Peacock? So it's very, because Universal, that's where they'd go.
Yeah,
but,
I thought it was Universal. Yeah,
I guess that would be an incentive to get Peacock at the same time. Then again, there is the Camp Cretaceous show on Netflix, so they could always just go there instead.
True.
Right.
Ironically, I don't know if people have watched that. I've said it before. I still have to watch the newest season, but it is actually better than both Jurassic World movies.
Yes.
Yeah, you keep recommending it to me. I keep forgetting to watch it.
Yeah. It's funny how these 4 and 5s of just things in general now have not been doing good. Like, it's just like weird. There's these new trilogies, and I mean, obviously Jurassic World kind of is like Force Awakens, where you're like, oh, it's all the classic stuff revisited. I'm sure the next one will be great after that then, right? And then you get the next one and you're like, I fucking don't know what happened with anything.
Yeah.
And
I personally really enjoyed Jurassic World, the first one of this trilogy.
It was safe. It was safe and easy.
Yeah. And then the second one was just like off the rails insane.
Yeah, no, that one was just, it didn't make any sense.
Why did the raptor thing, like, look at the camera and smile?
I mean, honestly, I'm glad they did that, because it saved that movie for me personally. Like, majority of the stuff in that movie wasn't even interesting until they did that, and I'm like, okay, you have my attention now. But I'm curious to see like how the actual quality will be of the film, because obviously they're like, you could see everyone's together. They're like, oh look, it's Neil. What's Neil's name? Sam Neill. Sam Neill and Chris Pratt together, and all of them together. And I'm hoping like seeing all these different dinos, and I think they showed like that prologue where the T-Rex just gets its ass beaten by a bigger carnivore. Like, I want to see something like that. I think it was called like the Gigarex or something, but I honestly think that was his name. I could be wrong. I used to know dinosaurs, but I used to read those books. I'm hoping it's good enough where I don't have to call it a comedy of the year. Like, that's my hope for the movie, at least. It doesn't. I did like the
tone of this trailer. It didn't seem so like comedic, although they didn't really sell the last one as a comedy either. It was just like, oh my god, we got to save these dinosaurs.
This one felt like an adventure story, whereas the second one was very tragic for the sake of being tragic. Like, oh, so sad that dinosaurs are falling off this cliff.
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, it's so sad that this girl is a clone of Wait, what? Okay, I'm out.
Oh yeah, she's in the
That's
new
my
one too.
favorite. Yeah. Once I saw her, I was like, well, okay.
That whole thing is like, they're alive just like me. Like,
I wanted the Indoraptor when it snuck into a room to be like, we're not so different, you and I. We could rule this.
Oh my god.
Takes his monocle off.
Cut to like Jurassic Park 3, where it's just like Alan's like nightmare in the plane.
yeah.
The
Alan?
raptor's like, Alan.
Wake up, Alan, we're here. Like, that'd be so stupid. They should let me direct one. I'm gonna make it horrible. All right. But any other words on the trailer?
Nah, I'm like, it looks good so far, but I'm not really like jazzed for this one, I guess.
It's our big summer blockbuster.
Not enough guns. That's
Yeah.
Oh yes, of course.
Just make it aliens, but with dinosaurs. Not enough guns. That's all I have to say.
Oh my god, I actually want that to be the next one after this. It's just like aliens show up to collect the
Exactly.
dinosaurs.
So no, we already. That's like fucking Transformers already, dude. I don't want that again.
We had cowboys versus aliens. Now we can do dinosaurs versus aliens.
I should watch that again. That was fun. All right. Time for the Book of Boba Fett, and of course, guys, you know, if we're talking about it here, there's going to be spoilers already. Enough said for that. For this, though, we have some specific topical questions followed by pretty much like kind of the arcs we got, which were kind of like 3 different ones for the most part. And we'll go through those kind of like piece by piece. But the first question I presented was more so the setting itself. Is the desert or Tatooine overplayed at this point in time? Which I didn't ask these because these are what I think. It's more of like, these topics have come up a lot online, I feel like.
Yeah, no, I mean they do keep going back to not just Tatooine, but like desert planets. Like in Force Awakens, they had Jakku, which is if you did not tell me that it was a different planet, I would have thought it was Tatooine, just a different part of it.
And Rise of Skywalker as well had a crazy sand useless sequence as well.
The colors.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I don't know. I think that Tatooine is already such an interesting place because it's like the concept of a planet that's on the outer rim of the galaxy. It's so far away from the central authorities that like that's where all like crime lords go to stay away from like prying eyes of the government or whatever, to as far as they can get anyway. Like I think it makes sense. It's a cool place, and it would make sense for if you're gonna do a story about Boba Fett specifically. Maybe it would go there because he's got a lot of history with that planet specifically. So it never really bothered me that this whole show was on Tatooine, but I could see how a lot of people are like, man, there's like a whole galaxy out there. Just do another place, maybe.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat where, like, from a logistics standpoint, it makes complete sense because all of these productions are happening at the same exact time. So you've got Obi-Wan, Mandalorian season 2, and Boba Fett were all in production, you know, one after the other. So it's like once you put the time into making these assets, both digital and physical sets, it's like I got to keep using them, right? It's the same reason game sequels have a lot of reused stuff, a lot of years saved on that. So it's like if you're gonna do it, at least make it interesting. And you know, not to get too far ahead, but I personally think they at least, like you were saying, James, made it interesting because it has a lot of backwater history for sure.
Yeah, I think for me, I think deserts are overplayed, but just because in terms of desert planets in general, but Tatooine itself, I feel, isn't explored that much. Like we've gotten it, of course, you know, episode 1, episode 2, episode 4, 6, and it's more of just, oh, the character is here and they're just doing their thing in the huts, and that's about it. You see Mos Eisley, you see the pod racing area, and then you see Jabba's palace and the Sarlacc pit, and you're like, all right, that's it, we're gone. You don't get anything else until I want to say, was it KOTOR 1 or 2 that talks about Tatooine and like how the Tuskens were.
I think you go in KOTOR 1, but I would not be the person to don't quote me on that.
But they pretty much, they're the ones that talk about how the Tusken Raiders used to be an advanced people until wasn't it until the water left or something, and then they lost everything.
Like Tatooine used to be like a lush like tropical planet, or I don't know about tropical, but like it was like it wasn't a desert planet. And yeah, so like the history behind the Tusken Raiders and the Jawas is super interesting because they somehow both are native species to Tatooine, and they just both adapted to the changing of the climate in different ways. And like as I understand it, the Jawas retreated underground, and that's why they like have those like hoods, and they're like constantly like shaded because they're used to dark environments. And the Tusken Raiders adapted to living on the sands. And so like I know one of the questions you wanted to get to later was like the split between the flashbacks and the current stuff, but like that was one of the things I liked about this season was that we did get to see more about the Tusken Raiders like culture and like how they survive in the desert. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, and these things I feel like were the reason why Tatooine should be used more often, just because it's fun to actually explore the planet and see how much there is instead of just going there for a second and go, wow, what a spectacle, and then you bounce and never see it again. Like, when was the last time we saw Bespin, for example?
Right.
There's so much you can really explore, and you know, Tatooine, I feel like at the same time will get very crowded very fast, considering now we have Obi-Wan coming in that one. But
True.
There's still a little bit more I think you can explore before we kind of not shelve it, but kind of put it in the rear view and be like, we'll come back to it again, but we don't need to be here that often anymore.
I think you touched on this, Cameron, but it's really a testament to what type of storytelling you can do now. Like, I cannot be more happy that Star Wars is now a serialized story instead of it being these small contained films. Like, yeah, they were all kind of linked to each other, but you didn't really get time to sink your teeth into everything. As someone who's read almost all of the Star Wars books starting from 1995 when they did Shadows of the Empire, it was like 97 or something like that. I always knew that there's that stuff, and I wondered, like, man, if everyone could hear these stories, because they're all so interesting, it would be phenomenal. So, you know, whatever, 2 decades later, 3 decades later, we're finally getting that, and it's just like, yeah, no more movies, please. Let's just keep doing these deeper, longer tales.
No, very much so. It's crazy when you look back at the Skywalker saga of movies. It literally is planet hopscotch, the movie, each movie, to the point where, you ask me and I'm like, oh yeah, Hoth is my favorite. I love Battle of the Hoth. And that's like in the first 15 minutes, and then you're gone and you never see it again. And you're like, fuck. Like,
yeah.
That's my favorite part. Seeing it now, like, we're potentially just seeing Tatooine as the first hit here makes me excited, because I do want to see new planets, but I'm also more interested now in revisiting all the planets we did see in the Skywalker saga and being like, hey, do you want to check out, like, maybe not Naboo, but do you want to check out like fucking Hoth and Bespin and
Coruscant, man. I think Coruscant's the next one. I think eventually the story that was going to be 1313 will get a show about Coruscant Underworld.
That would be cool.
That'd be cool. Like, Coruscant is such an interesting place. You could do so many stories there.
I mean, for those that don't know, George Lucas had a 50 episode, all scripted, all ready to go.
Right.
For real?
Underground. It was called, I think, Underground or Underworld series, a live action TV show where it would take place in the underbelly of Coruscant. Oh. And I saw footage of it, and it looked pretty fucking good. The reason he was waiting because he wanted more affordable but still high tech equipment, basically, for technology for everything. And then Disney bought them, and I don't think they were probably like, no, fuck that, dude. So
more Skywalker saga.
Well, we already saw what they wanted to do in the beginning, and happily things are changing for the better, at least so far, I think, maybe.
Yes.
But yeah, interesting on that part. The next thing was Boba Fett himself. Does the man live up to the hype of the persona we've had since Empire Strikes Back?
I don't know. For me, like, I don't think he ever got to as badass of a moment as in The Mandalorian season 2, where he just like wiped out an entire battalion of stormtroopers. And you like, the music in that scene was just like such a good like pair to it, but it's just like, it literally made me go like, oh, this is why this guy is the most feared bounty hunter in the galaxy. And as cool as this season was, and like I liked his character in it, he didn't seem as like indestructible as in that one scene in The Mandalorian. But like, I don't know. Overall, I liked his character in this season.
Which, to point out really fast, that episode from Mandalorian was also the one directed by Robert Rodriguez as well, who was the showrunner for this one.
Yeah. For me, again, as someone who's read the books, I'm going to keep bringing this up. I know that Disney's wiped that canon clean, and they're now picking and choosing what they want from the old canon to bring into this new canon. I think it was a really nice choice for them to kind of wipe the slate clean. I had a feeling of who Boba Fett was through all the books and the comics and the games, but that's not the one that they presented in the show. And I really liked the way they decided to go with it, where it's like a man who is kind of driven by rage. They imply that the death of his father was a big moment in his life because he lost that figure so early on. So the whole show's kind of undercurrent is about finding your family, found family, finding mentor figures, becoming a mentor figure, and seeing his journey and his inner conflict of being a killer versus someone who's responsible for others' safety. I really enjoyed that element. And I think it lived up to that. Whether or not that's the hype that you are looking for, it's for me, the introspective kind of story that I was looking for out of this like one note Clint Eastwood inspired, no talking character from the original trilogy.
Yeah, one of my favorite lines in the season was like, someone asked Boba, like, why are you even like doing all of this right now? He's like, and he said, one of the things I learned from the Raiders, like, you only get so far without a tribe.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's a cool line.
Yeah, and all you have to do is kill fat Bib Fortuna. I get my family from this. But no, I agree, and especially looking back at the books, personally, I never read many of them. I've actually only listened to the zombie ones, Red Harvest and Death Troopers. I have a bunch on Audible ready to go, and it's all like the X-Wing, Shadow, and Thrawn stuff. But I used to wiki the shit out of all that stuff, and I know like he became Mandalore. He had a daughter who wanted to kill him, who took his armor. He accidentally saved Han at a certain point.
He teams up with Han for like 5 books, and they're like friends by the end. It's really weird.
Like, I will stop trying to kill you now. I think it was also during like the Yuzong Bong shit.
Yes,
right?
that's when it was. And then Han becomes his daughter's like mentor figures because he lost his son or whatever. It was very silly, but interesting too. Anyways,
which son? He loses both sons, right?
I know, right? Spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers from the like oh my god. But yeah, so he has like a full life. It's just like kind of with Luke, except with Luke it's that we're not gonna talk about Luke, what happened with him, but it is interesting to have a complete new start, especially because that does get a little too deep, and if you're not going to do it with the main character of the franchise, then it wouldn't make sense to do it with Boba Fett either. Like that would make less sense as well. But in terms of living up to the legend, I think at least from Mandalorian, it showed that he did. And then here you get like, oh, this dude's still pretty fucked up. It's like every episode, someone beats the shit out of him and he has to go back to the Bacta tank. And it's like, well, I was already trying to recover anyway. But he is also older compared to the way he was in Empire. Like you could even see Tamara Morrison's like, I got a little bit extra packed in there. The armor is a little bit more displayed out there as much compared to the original version.
Well, he's also wearing like a robe underneath it.
That is very true. He's also wearing a robe. I mean, he's still pretty fit.
I do like that they like kind of worked in his time with the Tusken Raiders like into how his like get up is now, I guess.
Right.
Oh no, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, you just see him in Mandalorian, you're just like, what the fuck? I don't know why, but I'm happy about it. I don't know why it's happening, but cool. Yeah. But otherwise, I do think in a way it lives up to the hype, but also the hype created behind him was also hype that was kind of insane to begin with, considering like all we had from him was Empire, and he just kind of says, he's no good to me, dead. And then he flies into a fucking pit. And then you also see him in a horrid thing where he's animated, which was actually cool, but it's just, everything else was, no one talks about the Christmas special. So, good enough for me. Definitely good enough. Next up, the combination of using flashbacks in modern time of what's going on, that kind of splinter there with pacing. How did you guys feel about that?
Like I meant, as much as I mentioned, I enjoyed the seeing the culture of the Tusken Raiders and stuff. Like it was cool to flesh out that people. but like I don't know, it just felt like it went on for a while. Like the pacing for this show was weird for me because it for a long time I was just like, okay, what's the point? And like what is this all building to? And like I mean, the last episode was super cool, but even still, I'm just like, okay, so Boba Fett is just like the head of this town now? Was that the point of everything? I don't know. And like also by the end of the season, I had like almost forgotten about the Tusken Raider stuff because it really just felt like explaining this is how he got to where he was in the Mandalorian. And it was cool, but maybe not necessarily necessary to go on for like several episodes.
So I personally really enjoyed the way they kind of went back and forth. I agree with you in some ways where I actually like the Tusken Raider stuff the most. And I wanted more of that, and I thought it was really abruptly ended.
It does feel like it ends
and that was a very strange choice. I get that they had a certain limit of what they were able to do as far as time and episode and money, but it's almost like if you want to tell this beautiful story, because I really do think it was poignant and kind of contained, then give it what it needs. Like by episode 2, at the end of that, like the whole train sequence and everything, it was so cool to me because there's no Jedi, there's no lightsabers, there's no crazy force. There's just 3 people fighting a runaway train, you know, very Old West kind of stuff. It was a nice little adventure moment. And then it just stops after that. And it's like, I think we could have done with maybe one more episode of full Tusken stuff just to kind of fully round it out. But as far as back and forth goes, seeing it as a whole, I do believe that if they had just kind of made it chronological, it would have probably settled better with more people.
Maybe that would have made more sense to me.
Yeah.
For me,
yeah, like now that you mention it, it did, like the Tusken Raider stuff, like maybe the reason why I forgot about it by the end of the season was because it ended so abruptly.
Right.
I mean, so for me, it's like if you did divide it up, it would have felt a little weird because you would have seen that whole flashback and it probably would have lasted, I guess, like probably 2 episodes, most likely. And that whole time you're probably watching it, you'd be wondering, well, what happened after you shot Fat Bib Fortuna? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah.
And you'd be questioning it until you get to like potentially then a 3rd episode. So 3 weeks in, then you'd finally be like, oh, okay, cool, finally, all right. But I think it's weird because I agree too, where the Tusken story was probably my favorite part of the show. It was the most interesting, probably the most invested, because you kind of just see that journey commence and it's just always constant. But then like you get to the rest of the regular episode and you're like, wait, how much time is left? And it ends and you're like, oh, that was barely anything.
Yeah.
And it felt weird because by the end of the series, you only really get 1 episode that's the modern stuff, and it's the finale. And it's just interesting seeing how little it actually really takes over the entire show, like in terms of the balance of how much is probably done. It almost felt like it barely, because honestly, the Tusken story outlived the modern story in each episode they were both in, right? Or at least that's what it felt like.
It was more screen time was devoted to that narrative for sure.
And having that one finale episode kind of balanced it out, I guess, in terms of the length of time. And then, of course, we have the other 2 episodes that were not even focused on Boba Fett at all.
That was so weird.
It almost makes it so they're equally charged with time, which is interesting. When it is called like the Book of Boba Fett, which I guess leaves room for like, it doesn't necessarily have to be about this one thing. It's kind of like different types of stories in one thing or one book. So I guess that does fit. But at the same time, I was disappointed with the lack. Like I said, Tusken stuff is my favorite part of it, but I was disappointed with the lack of present day time and focus on Boba Fett and what he was doing there overall.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the 2 Mandalorian episodes, it just, after a while, I was like, why is this the Book of Boba Fett? Because it seems like
Which
there's not much focus on what Boba Fett's doing in the current time
which
for this show.
which brings in the next thing, which I think works in with it perfectly. Mandalorian season 2.5. Was it unnecessary, or did it fit in well with everything else?
I really
No, you go.
okay. I really enjoyed those 2 episodes. I thought they were really cool, but it did feel really jarring to finish an episode of Boba Fett and then the next week start up the next episode. And I literally was like 10 minutes in, I was like, did I accidentally click onto the Mandalorian or something? Am I watching an episode I accidentally missed or something? Because it literally was just an episode about the Mandalorian, which again, really cool. And I was shocked how many things they set up for this that I thought they were just going to be like breadcrumbs to make you like want to see what happens in Mandalorian season 3, but they just answered them all in the season. So I don't know. As much as I enjoyed them, I don't think they really felt like they fit into this season. Like, it felt like a really long detour just to have Fennec Shand show up at the end of one of them and be like, hey, I got a job for you. Can you help? He's like, yeah, sure.
Which I just want to say really fast. I think that is probably why you forgot about you didn't have as much recollection of the Tusken Raider storyline, was because
Also
the
that-
Mandalorian 2 episodes of that probably threw
Right.
that off a lot.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
For me, it was really the filmmakers making a statement, maybe Disney as well, going, you know, I've been kind of keeping up with the Marvel stuff, but for the most point, they're pretty self-contained stories, but this is them making a statement going, if you want to keep up with Star Wars, you have to watch every single episode. I also personally, this is a personal experience, I know a lot of people around me who were not interested in watching this show until episode 5 came out. All the TikToks, all the Instagram posts started spoiling stuff. And they said, well, now I got to watch the whole thing because it seems like this is kind of this intertwined narrative that's being written. So to me, it's a very intelligent move. Was it elegant? No, I don't think it was elegant whatsoever. But this is a good testing bed for these kinds of weirder things. It's like, okay, Mandalorians are super polished, pristine narrative that we're telling with this character that you like know and love, this whole cast of characters. And if we make these little side stories, little 6-episode, 7-episode books, so to speak, we can kind of play around with it and do weirder things. And you know, whether or not this experiment pays off or continues is to be seen. But that's what it seemed like to me as far as why they're doing it this way. It's more of a keep your Disney Plus subscription, because that's one of their biggest issues right now, is keeping people on board. They'll just keep it for the 3 months and then turn it off, you know.
That makes sense. And especially like looking at this, where I think it's the funniest thing, especially we did an episode on Mandalorian season 2 and we had talked all about it. And by the end of it, we're like, it's going to be interesting seeing season 3 where Jin doesn't even have Grogu with him. And it's going to be like focused on Mandalore and all this shit. And I think it's the funniest thing in the world that you're gonna get to season 3 and it's gonna feel like that end of season 2 didn't even, it's just like, oh yeah. What the fuck, if you didn't watch Boba Fett, you're gonna be like, how the fuck is he already back? And it's like, oh, you missed those 2 episodes where he came back and they did a thing and it was done in another show, and you're gonna be like,
it's also comfortable though. Like I really do feel like Star Wars is in this place where they tried making people comfortable by showing them Han Solo, Princess Leia, X-Wings, like stuff that we've seen already, and that was the only thing that they were doing. Now it's like, okay, we can branch out a bit, but the comfort comes from seeing the things you know and love that we've already presented to you that are new. So it's like the Mandalorian and Grogu are this comforting thing. I know so many people who are like, if Grogu wasn't in this show, I would never watch The Mandalorian. So he has to be there when season 3 starts, because I think a lot of people will be like, Grogu's not here. Tell me when he shows up, and then I'll start watching The Mandalorian season 3. Now they don't have to do that, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought that's what I was thinking when they did this, because, you know, it's crazy, because I really, you know, I love Grogu. Don't get me wrong, but he's not the interesting part of the series for me at all. I know that's how they get a lot of other people in, and that's how those people watch. That's the reason why they watch Star Wars. but I've always, enjoyed Star Wars for Star Wars, and the Western field, Mandalorian, and everything else. But it's crazy that they had that. I mean, I could be wrong, but it just feels crazy that they had that little faith that even in a few episodes of Mandalorian season 3, without Grogu, that the numbers would drop that immensely.
Yeah.
And they needed him back just by doing it in between another show.
Yeah.
To just have people bought on for it.
It's the divide between business and storytelling. It's a very interesting line to walk. And I think Filoni, with his years of working on Star Wars stories and, being canceled, being renewed, being canceled over and over, I think he's kind of learned a thing or two. And then Favreau obviously has immense industry knowledge. So there's like a nice pairing there where they're making something that's working so far, I think.
Yeah, no, he's doing it's funny, like everyone talks about, like, just give Filoni and Favreau the helm of Star Wars, just give them Lucasfilm, like let them just take over, which, I personally completely agree with. But I think overall it did take away from Boba Fett just having those 2 Mandalorian episodes. Ironically, like watching those episodes, I had a smile on the entire fucking time. I was so excited.
Oh yeah,
and
nice.
Especially just because when they hint at it in episode 4, they're like, oh, I can call a friend, and you hear his music come on, and you're like, yeah, oh, he's gonna show up in the next episode, and they'll like start figuring this shit out. And then it's not even that, they're just like, no, he is the next episode, and that's it.
Dude, like, I love that Mando's been to Halo though.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that was interesting. That was something for sure.
But yeah, one of the things that they set up in episode, I guess 5, that I was like, oh, surely this is just like a hint at Mando season 3, was Luke going like, okay, I got this thing from your buddy Mando, and I got Yoda's lightsaber. Which one are you gonna choose? And it was very clearly like, does Grogu forsake the Mandalorian and learn to be a Jedi, or does he go back to the Mandalorian? And I thought for sure we were going to find out how that which one he chooses in Mandalorian season 3. And if he chooses Jedi, then if they keep him in the show, they were going to have like the show maybe split between what the Mando is doing on Mandalore and what Grogu is doing with Luke, setting up the new Jedi Academy.
They hit the triple speed fast forward.
Yeah, and nope, like literally the next episode, Grogu shows up with I love the Beskar chainmail like shirt. Like that was pretty great. But it was just like, oh, I guess that's what he chose.
Yeah, it reminded me, funny enough, of, I was just thinking like, oh, just have the Rancor act like the cave troll in Fellowship and just try to poke him through the chest and be like, that's what a spirit of wild boar, and then you'll open it, it's like, oh, mithril shit, that's crazy.
Then I would have turned it off.
Yeah, right.
No, someone's gonna try to kill Grogu with a lightsaber. I think that's a pretty good kind of prophecy, Cameron, that he's gonna stop a lightsaber with that male, and it's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, and the interesting, like, I keep saying interesting, but the thing about all this too was, like, we get to that episode in 6 where Mando goes to that cool lush planet, and it's where Luke's new academy is going to be, and you see Ahsoka there and everything else, and of course they're like, oh, you want to see what Ahsoka is going to do next? Tune into the Ahsoka show, and you're like, oh yeah, and they just cast Thrawn, I think, and shit.
It's all connected.
Who knew? And then of course it's basically a giant like, hey, Mando season 3, Ahsoka season premiere coming and stuff. But having Luke there that whole time too, like,
see, the CG on Luke was insane.
Yeah, which I feel like we'll talk more about when we get to the full Mando arc, but just saying, like, is the way they do that too, when they have Grogu leave and go back with Mando, as expensive as Grogu probably is, imagine how expensive Luke is. And they're like, well, if we take away Luke now, you got your Luke, you're all happy with your Luke, right? And we could put him away and take him back out for Christmas or something. Like that's definitely how I felt watching that and seeing that by the end. But overall, like you said, was it elegant? No. Is it understandable? Yes. Especially for the fact that makes 20 times more sense, which is crazy, because I'm like, yo, Boba Fett should be getting enough viewers by just his name alone.
Yeah, you would think.
of course, that's the older generations, probably from the 90s and maybe early 2000s at the best. Whereas Mandalorian is the modern day, where he is the only Disney Star Wars thing that is good.
And they put him and Grogu in Fortnite.
Yeah, what? Exactly.
Oh shit! I don't need it.
I got them both. I got the full Beskar armor. It's pretty great.
Yeah. Oh, do you now?
But yeah. So.
But yeah. So it's personally, I wouldn't have done that just because. But I'm not looking at it through a business perspective. I'm looking at it through a story perspective of like, it's funny looking at how Rodriguez probably had it going, and then they're like, well, you can do all this stuff, and then these two, Bryce Dallas Howard were coming, which she did a great job, by the way. But like, we'll do this, and it'll be like a fun little thing there. And I was like, all right, that's fine, but it takes away from Boba Fett's story, and that's how I perceive it personally. And which I think that pretty much answered the question for the most part, unless you guys have anything additional. But does Mandalorian's heavy inclusion diminish that of Boba Fett's?
As a final word, I think, from my perspective, I liked it a lot. I don't think it diminishes Boba Fett, because his arc was basically almost complete before they even got to the Mandalorian part. So it's basically just like a nice to have kind of thing, where I think someone mentioned this earlier, where he could have just shown up and they fought that final battle and it would have kind of played out the same way. Yeah. And then someone probably said, why not extend this thing instead of making it a long movie? Let's make it a really long movie and give people what they're kind of craving.
Okay. So. Yeah, I would agree. It doesn't feel like it diminishes Boba's story. For me, it's more like a detour, because like if Fennec had just been like, hey, I know who we can buy or who we can hire as reliable muscle, and then the Mando shows up in the next episode, and then they go on to the final fight, like it would have been the exact same show, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much like an anime when they do a big battle in the middle, they're like, here's 2 flashback episodes, and you're like,
yeah. That's basically what it felt like. Is just like a side detour thing.
Okay. And it was enough where I guess when you do that type of thing, and half the time you're like, please don't do this to me. I want to see what's going on right now. Don't take me away from what's going on. This is that very rare time where you're okay with it and you're enjoying what they're showing you instead of like taking you back to where it currently was. Yeah. All right. So getting into the storylines themselves, the first off was the Sand People story, like pretty much the flashback storyline. Boba Fett's inclusion with the Sand People. How are your overall just like feelings on it? Like this is more like, I guess, reviewing these arcs as like just standalone for each arc specifically.
I think I mentioned earlier that like I did enjoy the Sand People thing. It's just as regrettable as it is that by the end of this, like, well, at least by the time Mando shows up, I had like almost forgotten it, because like we said, it ended so abruptly. I am very much one of those people who I love lore. So giving me more about like the backstory, well, not exactly backstory of the Sand People, we didn't really get that, but just like learning more about their culture and fleshing out like how they survive in the desert, as opposed to literally the earlier Star Wars movies where it's just like they were just people that lived in the desert and fucked with people and rode banthas. That was basically it. That's all.
Shot pod racers.
Yeah. So like it's cool to see they're more complicated than that and stuff like that. Also makes you feel really bad about Anakin just like slaughtering an entire village of them.
Well, I mean, he wasn't just killing the men. He also, I'm pretty sure, killed the women and the children.
The women and children.
That's what I heard, yeah.
Honestly, I'm surprised there's not a Robot Chicken sketch of just Sand People waking up and be like, oh, hey, Earl, how you doing today? Oh, you going to the big game? Oh, I'm so pumped for it. Who are you going for? I'm going for this person. And they get onto the thing and just start shooting at the people they're going for in the pod race. Like, that would have been great. But Andreas, how'd you feel?
So, as I mentioned before, Sand People storyline was my favorite part of the whole show, because it really indicated to me that this was going to be more of a character piece for Boba Fett, where it's like, okay, he's almost reborn. Like, you get this Phoenix moment. He comes out of the Sarlacc. We all know that happens. That's one of the few things that everyone kind of knows, that he survives the Sarlacc pit. but you really get to learn who he is as a person by having him interact with people who he can't just talk to. Like, that was a really intelligent storytelling device, I feel like, where it's like, okay, there's this language divide. So how does his actions play into, you know, who he is as a person, and how do these people treat him? There's this mutual respect. There's this survival instinct that's very obvious at first, and then it just kind of blossoms from there till what I think the second episode is one of my favorite things I've ever seen in Star Wars, just from beginning to end, of him learning the martial arts technique, getting the lizard in his face,
That was super funny.
forging his own blade, his own gaffy stick. Like it, especially since that, I have to mention the forge where he makes the gaffy stick is based off one of my favorite Ralph McQuarrie paintings. So cool to see that brought to life in actual canon Star Wars. I could have watched a ton of it.
From?
It was just one of Ralph McQuarrie's concept pieces for Tatooine,
sure.
in general, and all the Mos Espa stuff was based off of episode 1 concept art that they had done years ago. So seeing Mos Espa, those giant shots, I was so elated because I love that art book. So to check it out at some point. Yeah, there's like all this stuff that they've been building for years that we've never gotten to see. So this whole show for me was a lot of those nice little tidbits, and the Tusken Raider story was just phenomenal. And it's sad because unfortunately, you know, it's going to go bad. And I just think that moment, that's the only part I didn't like, is that when he finds them all and they've been slaughtered, it was sad, but it just ended, and that was it, you know. So that was my only gripe with the whole thing. I could have taken 5 more episodes of him just chilling with those guys and messing with people and spice smugglers and stuff.
Okay, definitely. Personally, I agree. The flashbacks were my favorite part because of the whole regrowth storyline, and just seeing him pretty much just get stronger. Like, you think about like how strong he was before, and then you realize like, oh, this is him before that Stormtrooper Massacre episode where he just literally killed everyone, and you're seeing him grow into that capable warrior. Because I like, when you watch that episode, you see him use the what is their rifle called again, or their spear,
the gaffy stick.
The gaffy stick. You see him use that on stormtroopers and shit, and he's just like taking them out left and right, and you're just like, oh my god. And especially like his face, he's just like, ah. Which is so fucking good. But watching that whole journey, and especially like you get the clan chief Tusken Raider, you get the like high warrior who's pretty much like the one who's been training him the whole time.
Right.
You have the kid who is learning, like, they becoming friends, and the kid like relies on him and actually kind of idolizes him at a certain point, which is pretty hilarious. You have of course the award-winning Rodian, who gets choked out and thrown into nothingness, which I thought was pretty funny. There was just a Rodian there in general. Like, watching that whole tribe of them and having unique ways of showing who's who. Like, you know, when you look at the Tusken Raiders, at least in episode 3, episode 2 and episode 4, you know, they look exactly the same, and they're like, well, how do we do it this time? And it's like, oh, we'll give this one like a cool little black cloak, and this one you give like a medallion and shit, and he's a little bit heftier than the others. You can tell he's like the leader and stuff. He probably eats the most because the leaders get usually the most and whatnot.
Even then, this tribe, you could tell, was different from the ones from those movies as well, which was a really nice detail, to your point.
And the cool thing about that is they remind you, like, it's just like anything else with any species or race or whatever. They're not all the same. Like, each tribe is going to be different, and who knows how those tribes interact with each other too, which that was one thing I actually wanted that we didn't get. I kept thinking, oh, he's going to find the other tribes and he's going to like unite some of them, and they're going to help in the final fight.
That would have been so cool.
I was waiting for that, and I won't lie, you know, of course it didn't happen. It was never hinted at, but I think that would have been a very good addition. And I think, well, I'll talk about it later, but regarding the season 2 and stuff, but just seeing that one tribe made me go, okay, the story of the Sand People isn't done, and there's a lot more we could see. And when you think about it too, like, okay, Tatooine, you think sand people, you think the people living in like Mos Espa, Mos Eisley and stuff. Was it Pelgo that becomes Freetown?
Yeah.
And you have pretty much like whoever lives in a bar and in a cantina and shit. And like those are the three main branches, besides like, of course, the Jabba palace and stuff, which we learn now is not as important. I mean, now that Boba Fett's in it, it's not a big faction that you think of as much compared to like Jabba, because Jabba was sprawling, and Boba Fett, you're watching him grow. So it's going to be like something you already know is going to be shown. Whereas like these other areas are more unfocused and you could see what happens with them now.
Right.
But just seeing how they function, how they get little weird gourds from the ground in the sand, and they're like, oh, this is our water source. Yeah. And how they use here's a lizard, it goes in you, lizard make you think
so
crazy.
Weird. And it came back out too.
It's the vision quest. Yeah, you gotta have a desert.
I thought that was part of the vision.
That was so fucking good. That was such a, when you watch that scene, you're just like, oh, it is. Oh shit, what the fuck?
Yeah, I just love his like his initial like, they got me a lizard. Thank you.
God, that was so
there's like sand.
And then that fucking sand monster. I don't.
Oh yeah,
that was interesting.
The Ray Harryhausen creature.
Yeah, because at first you see it and you're like, yo, they can't have a second crate dragon. That'd be fucking insane. And they're like, no, it's this.
It's like a weird fucking centaur thing.
Was
it's
that a
Goro from Mortal Kombat? You know?
Yeah, that was hella weird. The way he was, I was like, I've seen you before, haven't I? Which I also, seeing all the Ralph McQuarrie stuff from years ago come to fruition. Just like, in Rebels, we got Zeb's species, which was originally the Chewbacca concept. Like seeing everything come to use has been very, very cool. Especially just, it's like if they took unused Alan Lee sketches from Tolkien and then we're like, oh, here you go, make something out of this. I'd be like,
it'd be sick. Yeah, there's so much unused stuff. Or it's one of those things where if it's so good and it's already there, why not use it? So this is just the perfect opportunity. There's so many good uses for it.
And I think, like, I feel like we'd never get that without Dave Filoni. Like, he's the one that's really like, hey, we could use this, we could use that. Like, where he tells everyone, like, hey, why don't we look in the like, we have all this, we have a giant library of all this existing stuff. Why don't we use it? And it's just been great watching all of that unfold. And the cool thing is, like, when you see someone that's a great architect for something, like I mean, not as good, but when you see J.J. Abrams doing the Star Trek movies, you're enjoying them and you're like, wow, these are really fun. And then they're like, oh, Star Wars got him, he's gone. You're like, oh, okay, I guess someone else to do Star Trek then.
Right.
Dave Filoni's already in the highest possible place. Like, there's nothing that could pull you from Star Wars. I feel like it's like, well, what's higher than Star Wars? Like, that is what you get pulled to do. You don't get pulled from that. Like, we saw he worked on other stuff before that. I think he worked on like Avatar and stuff, but like there's nowhere, they can't steal him. No one could steal him. I don't feel like they would, because he's such a Star Wars fan anyway.
Yeah. You feel like this is what he's been working towards the entire time.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's like the clone Palpatine of George Lucas, kind of like that. But yeah, so that's been really cool. But the Mandalorian storyline, or that Mandalorian arc, how'd you guys feel? Just not really, with the other stuff, but just standalone, seeing how that was from Mando's journey to him getting cast out of the Mandalorians to now he's just man and not DeLorean, and all this stuff with Luke, Ahsoka, and everything else with Grogu. How'd you guys feel about that?
I liked it, but then again, I'm just like, I've been a huge fan of the Mandalorian stuff since season 1, so I just liked seeing more of it. And also just like the places he went were super cool, like the Halo space station. I thought was a super interesting thing that just like, it makes sense that you would maybe make a space station like that. But then also, like seeing that he found the Mandalorian culvert again, and like he couldn't lie to them. He was like, I have had my helmet removed, or I have removed my helmet for others. And they're like, okay, so if you want to be part of our gang again, go to be cleansed in the waters of Mandalore. That's like buried under mountains of like rubble from the cities that were destroyed by the Empire. Like, so that maybe is a setup for what he's going to try to do in season 2 or 3. So that was cool. I liked seeing Luke and like the start of his new Jedi Academy, and like Ahsoka being there a little bit too. I kind of wish there was a little bit more interaction between Ahsoka and Luke, but I mean, we had that one.
Did.
There was that one line where it's like so much like your father or something like that, and it's
like,
like,
is that an insult?
Yeah, right. So I don't know. Like, I personally liked it, but we already mentioned that it did feel a little bit out of place.
For sure.
This is an interesting one because it started off strong in the first episode with The Mandalorian, and then it had to win me over big time because I really dislike, and this is a personal preference, when they bring in things for the sake of, oh, I've seen that before. I think South Park refers to it as the member berries.
Yep.
And Star Wars is full of them, but it's kind of makes sense because if you're going to go to Tatooine, of course you're going to see things that you've seen before. So it's a nice balance you kind of have to strike. But I love the Darksaber training. I love the Mandalorian, the Vizsla family, trying to get that saber back and his banishment. But then the Naboo starfighter, I was not sure about him. Like, of course it has to be a ship we've seen already. Like, it could have been something new and cool.
That did feel weird to me.
But then they did it. They actually made it work. And that ship is so sick. The sound design, the visuals, like when it takes off, I was like, this is great. But man, Amy Sedaris, I feel so sorry for her. She wouldn't stop talking for like 10 minutes straight in that Naboo starfighter sequence. And I think she's a phenomenal talent, but that dialogue, it just wouldn't end. I'm like, give her little quips here and there, but she just wouldn't stop talking.
Java before?
Yeah, exactly.
It was like, what?
I was like, that's funny for like 2 seconds, and then it just keeps coming back, and you're like, okay. So that was the only part where they kind of had to win me over. But by the end, when he like waves the little kid and pushes the booster, and you hear the beautiful like sound design of that machine, it's like, I love this ship. This is so cool.
And then Highway Patrol.
And we have to talk about, yeah, right, those guys who were going to get their own show but won't anymore. We got to talk about BD because BD is a big deal. I don't know if it's been confirmed that is the same BD unit that Cal Kestis has in Fallen Order.
That's why everyone was doing the Leonardo DiCaprio like, oh
yeah.
So I just assumed it was a BD unit.
Right.
That's what I thought it was a BD unit.
We don't know.
I was just like,
that.
Oh, cool. They're referencing a droid that we saw in a game. That's cool.
We don't know that for sure because the interesting part is Mando's on Tatooine. She doesn't have the BD droid. He leaves, comes back. She has it. Well, the actor for Cal Kestis could easily have shown up and left him there and dipped out, and we can have our live action Fallen Order tie-in. And I want it very badly. So I'm hoping it's a teaser for Cal Kestis because we need more Jedi for Luke Skywalker to train, So I won't go too deep into that, but that was pretty nice little tie-in there.
I will go a little bit deeper on that actually really fast. Sure. Because it's funny when you say that, because when you look at season 2's ending of Mandalorian, when I couldn't help it, I just wanted to like see how people reacted. I never usually watch reactions, but I watched one for that episode.
Right.
And everyone's like, when they see the X-Men come in and they hear like they see the hood and they're like, is it Ezra or Cal? Yeah, right. Those were the two things people said, and I'm like, damn, they didn't even say Luke until they see the screensaver, and then they're like, oh, but like,
there's a new generation of fans who really love those characters because they're well designed, they're well fleshed out, and there's a place for them in this, these TV shows. I think
very much so.
Yeah, it would also be interesting to see Cal Kestis showed up because they literally could just get that actor to play the same character because they did the like facial capture and everything, and I mean he was good in Gotham. I didn't like that show, but he was good.
Played
in
like
Gotham.
3 people. He was great.
You don't hire that guy unless you're going to use him in something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so very much so.
I also want to see Janina Ivankar show up as the character from
Oh,
Iden?
that
Battlefront 2.
fucking
Yeah, Iden Verso.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
They could fix that hopefully and be like, hey, remember that horrible thing we did called Battlefront 2's campaign? Oh god, that was horrible. The what was it? The BD unit, they were very, I love that they tease you because they never say his number
Right.
at all. They're like, we're not going to say the number.
It's just one of those things where like if you recognize it, you know it.
Yeah, and because the whole thing was for Fallen Order, was it BD1? Was it BD1 or was it something else?
I believe it's like 01.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. That sounds right.
So yeah, it's very curious to see like, oh my god, if she just said the number, it would have solved so many problems instantly. Like that would have, but they knew, and they're like, we're not going to say the number, and you're going to wonder forever because who knows how long it's going to take. When you look at like kind of the roadmap they have for the other shows, which we'll get to in a sec, but definitely for that. Otherwise, yeah, the first Mando episode I thought was great, and it was so interesting because I'm like, oh, we're finally getting to see him without Grogu. This is really cool. And I was honestly thinking like, okay, we're going to probably get more of that in season 3 then. Like that's going to be season 3. It's more like this. We're just getting a taste of it, of how that's going to be. And then, you know, by the end, they're like, oh, well, I have to go see a little friend. And I'm like, you actually going to do that next episode? Like, are you actually really going to do that? And then they're like, yeah, we're actually going to do that. Here we go. And I legitimately thought they weren't even going to show Luke. Because the minute they get there and you see that, you just see stuff building up and you see R2 there. And I'm thinking R2's going to leave and come back with Grogu. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's a thing. And he's going to say, hi, how's it going? Here's your little chainmail, bye. And then they're like, no. We're going to do a completely different thing. Here's actually Luke for like 20 minutes. But because it's Luke for 20 minutes versus Luke for 20 seconds in Mandalorian season 2. Like, I love Luke. Don't get me wrong. He's still like, the season 2 reminded me why he is probably still my favorite character in Star Wars besides certain Republic era troopers and like clones and ARC troopers and stuff. Seeing that they've done a great job from like when they had Grand Moff Tarkin and Leia and stuff in Rogue One to here now with the facial effects. But then you're like, well, you know, we saw him for 2 seconds in Mandalorian season 2. You're just like, all right, bye, see you guys. And this time you're like, he can't do that much emotion. He's kind of stuck with what we got here. There's not much else they can do unless they just straight up get some. I'm like, I get it. I love that Mark Hamill's doing this. Just fucking get Sebastian Stan. Just do it.
Yeah. Yes. Someone with a full range would be nice. I agree. It's interesting because he's like the stoic kind of personality. And it kind of seems like it's almost like he's acting on purpose that way. Like I felt like he was uncomfortable, you know, training at this point still. He's not used to doing it. So I can kind of justify the mannerisms that way, but you're right. It's like a technology limitation hitting it, unfortunately.
The most Luke part definitely was he goes like Grogu, and I'm like, there he is. That's what I was waiting to hear. But the interaction between him and Ahsoka, I honestly was never sure if I'd ever get to see that.
Right.
And we did get it, and then they're like, all right, bye. And I'm like, no, this is fine. We finally got it. Don't take this away. But it makes you think like really fast, like when do you think we'll see Luke next? Like
probably I think it's going to take a while this time, simply because if we're going to get an Ahsoka show, that this was kind of our indication she's not going to see him anymore because she's not a Jedi, right? So her place isn't there with him. So why would we see him again now that Grogu's gone? So I think they kind of shot their shot, and now they're going to take their time getting that tech better, because you can see the leap, like you said. Like, it was okay in Mando 2, and now it's way better. Like when he turns his head, one of the whole elements of that deepfake technology is when people do quick motions, you can tell it's wrong. In that episode, you can't tell. It's perfect when he's like quickly like moving his head and doing little eye movements and stuff like that. So they've really already started to get to the point where it's almost perfect. So give him another 2 years and Luke you won't tell, you know, at that point.
Yeah, that's like I was saying. Like you put them away, you won't see them again for a couple of Christmases. You're just like, oh, we're back inside the closet. But definitely, I can agree with that easily. And the Naboo Starfighter, I think it was very interesting because as a prequel person, like we grew up in the prequels. That was our
Right.
era
Right.
out of everything. So there, there's a lot of love hate there because I mean, like it's a whole thing. I think for those that don't know, we did an Up to It, Down to It episode. The very first one we did talk about the prequels, and it was a very, very interesting talk. But when you look back at that, you can watch those movies again now, and you think certain things are fucking hilarious. You're like, oh, this is a joke, even though it's not supposed to be a joke.
Right.
But it's one of those things I've always said where, like, at least it does something on its own. It's not trying to be what we already got. And that was one of the biggest strengths it had. And there was so much in it. There was so much in it that was amazing that we never got to really utilize because unfortunately George Lucas had a lot of yes men. So there was no full control there. And we're getting glimpses of that in the best possible fashion. Like, I mean, obviously the best part was the Clone Wars micro series, or I guess that was during it, but I guess the full on Clone Wars animated series that we got was a showing saying, hey, the prequels could be really cool. We just need to do them right.
Right.
And
we need more time.
We need to see that whole world unfold. And here we see Grogu's flashback, which we see the sacking of the Jedi Temple.
Mhm.
And it looks phenomenal. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing looking. It's not even old stock footage. This is new. This is amazing. I want more of this. I got so excited. I think, Luke freaked me out when we see him in Mandalorian season 2. Like my world was blown. It was destroyed. Like fucking Alderaan. This was like the equivalent in the Boba Fett, like out of everything we saw in Boba Fett, which, I think they show Luke. I was eating a sandwich. I almost spit my sandwich out. The minute they show Ahsoka, I didn't even know. I was like, oh, cool, we're done. I was drinking something. I started choking and water was like falling. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die.
Star Wars killed this man.
Legitimately. And I'm just like, I'm not going to have anything else because thank God, once they showed the clones, I was like, oh my God, they're going to try to fucking murder me here. But they showed that and that was amazing. And then the Naboo Starfighter, you look at it and you're just like, looking back and you're thinking, did I like the Naboo Starfighter or did I not like the Naboo Starfighter? I don't remember anymore. And I'm like thinking back to it and I'm like, I think I did. At least, 6-year-old me enjoyed it a lot for what it was, but it never held up to like the classic X-Wing. The minute they do the full, hey, we're going to pimp my ride and it's going to be really dope. That was the coolest shit. And like you said, like as a sound designer, listening to it purr was so fucking good. I was losing my mind. I'm like, oh, this is great. This is so good. And you see, space cops come in and they're like, hey, we're gonna need to see your license registration. He's like,
peace.
How'd he go light speed? He's not going light speed. He's just going wicked fast.
That is the coolest thing. We never really seen that speed that's not light speed. Mm-hmm. Which is really fucking cool and kind of builds the persona of the Mandalorian because, that character, he's named the Mandalorian and you think like, well, there's so many others and his name is Mando as a nickname and, we'll get to it soon, but like season 3, he's going back to Mandalore and the title of the leader of Mandalore is like the Mandalore. And it's like, well, he has to become the leader now because otherwise, why else would they call him the Mandalorian at that certain point in time? Like it's something that he has to be.
Right. It's been teased this entire time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just been a whole thing there. And then finally, sorry that took so long. Final arc, the modern arc where it's the, Syndicate War, Boba Fett taking over Jabba's palace and maintaining Mos Espa with the pikes and everything else. How is that for everybody?
I think it took a long time to build up to the final confrontation, but I personally thought that like this last episode was some of the coolest Star Wars I've seen in years. I mean, just like the fact that they wrapped in so many things from like this season and like other stuff too, to this last episode. I thought it was super cool. Like, I don't know why, but like the culminating with the Rancor, like just wiping out those, I don't even know what to call them, like super destroyer droids. Like
they're new, so yeah.
I mean,
we don't really know what they're called yet.
I mean, they definitely seemed reminiscent of the destroyer droids.
Right.
Just like without the rolling and like the shield. Like I mean, you talk about sound design, like the fact that those shields sounded like the old shields was like so nostalgic to me. I don't know. I think I mentioned earlier, like I liked the modern storyline. It just took it felt like a long wind up to get to the point of it all. And yeah, it just felt a little bit, I don't want to say anticlimactic because it was entertaining as all hell, but like it just felt a little weird at the end when Boba is just like walking through the streets and everyone is like revering him now, I guess. I don't know, it felt cool, but it also just was like didn't feel like it fit the badass that we were supposed to see Boba to be. But I don't know, that's not what he's trying to be anymore though. That's the thing.
I think you bring up a good point there. It made me think that they keep mentioning, oh, the spice traders are like ruining our way of life here in Tatooine, but we never really get to see how that's happening. So I think that would have hit harder that they were more grateful if we got to see the Pike Syndicate like beating people in the street or like executing people or like taking their shops over to sell spice or people getting addicted to it. And then
Maybe
it's
that's
like,
what I was missing.
Right. Yeah. And I really didn't think about that until right now, hearing you say that. And because I agree on a lot of points. It's like a cool, the action was neat. The story was like admirable. They're trying to tell with this kind of underworld stuff. But I just had to believe when they said, we're so grateful to you and everything's been bad. It's like, it looks pretty good to me. Like Tatooine looks nice now. Like, you know, so I don't know is it really that bad? You know, we just kind of take everybody's word for it, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing, it sounded like where they wanted to expand and like the whole thing with like Freetown and stuff. We see what Cobb Vanth is doing and potentially it could get worse. And yeah, we don't really see anything else besides that, really, that one time of them going into his territory or pretty much with the Sand People. Like the whole thing, it's like, how does it impact at least the Sand People? Oh, well, there's a train that rides by every day and fucking shoots everyone as it goes.
Just lights everybody up.
It's like, oh shit! Like that was for sure at least showing like, oh, that's what the spice trade does. At least to them, not to the urban environment, but to the rural environment. So we at least got one side of it, but just not pretty much, yeah, like you say, but like of the urban, like of the cities, what happens with those and how does that affect everything else? The cool thing I really enjoyed was like the whole, you know, Jabba ruled out of fear, ruled out of respect. And we see that as it goes through, like each episode, it starts with the Gamorreans and he's like, hey, you failed to protect me, or you failed to protect Jabba. But I mean, obviously, you know, how the fuck are you gonna stop Luke Skywalker? But like, you can work for me, reclaim your honor. And they're like, cool, you know, until you get pushed off a cliff and die. No one gives a shit after you die, but whatever. That was so fucking random the way they died, by the way, though. I was just like, oh, okay, is that it for the Gamorreans? Or just
it was sad.
Oh yeah, like I
was
forgot,
sad, man.
that did suck.
Yeah, they didn't say
I started
shit.
to really like them.
Yeah. It sucked too. They didn't even have their little coats anymore either. They were just naked. I was like, where's your little
man,
coats?
it's hot in the desert.
That's true. They're different kind of, you know.
True. But we see it first with the Gamorreans, and then he gains, which, you know, this is the first time we get them.
Ooh, the Wookiee too.
Yeah,
dude, I love that Wookiee.
Yeah,
one of the highlights of the entire show. Absolutely.
For sure.
That guy's such a badass.
Like he gains someone we've never seen in the Star Wars universe. He gets millennials. And finally get millennials. It's like, yo, out of work millennials, you know, you guys went to college, your degrees aren't work. Like, what are you guys doing? And it's like, there's no water here. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, well, come work for me. And you got your fucking color.
I did like that though, that he was just like, stop stealing from this guy. It's like, well, what are we supposed to do? There's no work here. Like, work for me. Like, that's a good solution. Yeah. That's actually pretty smart. And I also loved their like multicolored, like themed, like Vespa thing.
I think that was I could be wrong, but wasn't that like a George Lucas tribute there?
Was it?
I feel like
did he like Vespas? I know he likes really nice cars. Like he has many McLarens and stuff like that.
Oh, so I did not know that.
That's why I felt like that was why it was the multicolored,
like souped up.
Yeah. it gave me for I know some people were like go Power Rangers, but all I was thinking,
that's what it felt to me.
It could be because I watched it last year, but I was just thinking American Graffiti personally.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
okay.
totally.
Yeah, that's what I was. That's
Mel's Diner and all
that was running through my head. I was like, oh my god! And they got their little watering hole they all hang out at, and I'm like, yeah, this is very American Graffiti, and also Power Rangers, but very American Graffiti. And yeah, millennial. It's just funny having like I don't even want to call them anything else. I'm just like, yeah, these are the millennials. Boba Fett's gathering an army. He's got Gamorreans, millennials, Wookiees, and other things like that. It's like, oh yeah,
angry children.
Yeah. But the Chrysanthemum, I haven't read them, but he's supposed to be from the Star Wars comics. Like I think he shows up in Dr. Aphra, which is written by Karen Gillan and amazing author, by the way. That's why I still need to read all that shit. He's supposed to be like the rival to Boba Fett, where they've actually gone against each other apparently multiple times. I think during the original trilogy. I could be wrong, but that's what I heard at least. And he's the first of many. We get so many cameos in this season from like Ahsoka, Luke, Chrysanthemum, the fucking cowboy, like Angel Eyes, Good, the Bad, the Ugly himself, Cad Bane shows up, and
I did not expect to see Cad Bane in anything with Clone Wars.
The minute he shows up in Freetown, like you see the outline. The minute you see the hat, I'm like, they didn't make him live action. Did they make him live action? I was losing my mind, and I'm like, he's like showing up there, and I'm like, Cobb Vanth is fucking dead. This like he didn't even like before he even shot. The minute he just shows up, I'm like, oh, he's fucked. Like, there's no way anyone. From what we've seen, at least in Clone Wars and everything else, even when you watch Bad Batch, I think what's his face? Who's the leader? I forget what his name is.
Rambo.
Hunter.
Yeah, Hunter. Yeah, Hunter, Rambo. Either one works. He goes up against Cad Bane, and I'm like, I actually want to see who'd win. Cad Bane wins, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, there you go. The Hunter doesn't even stand a chance with them. That's crazy. And the only ones you've seen beat Cad Bane has just been Jedi.
Yeah,
like,
but
even then, to be a Jedi.
Even then, they got a lot of trouble. Like it wasn't easy, and I love that about him. Is that he's just like, I've been doing this so long. Your stupid magic is barely going to help you out of this.
Even they had to torture the shit out of his head with the Force to get him to tell them what he need, like from the interrogation. I remember there was like borderline torture.
Didn't they need like 3 Jedi to work on him? Yeah,
3. Yeah, that was so fucking cool. But like, he, in a time where we all perceive Boba Fett as the silent, unbeatable guy, besides just getting hit in the back and thrown into a pit. Cad Bane comes in. He's like that spiritual successor where it's like, well, what if we had Boba Fett, but he's a cowboy and he talks, but when he talks, he has meaning to his words. Like everything he says has like, it means he talks for a specific reason. He doesn't do it just to talk.
Right.
And I feel like we've seen him so much throughout the Clone Wars in Bad Batch. I feel like he's been in other stuff. I don't really remember what else, but enough where he's gone through so many things. He feels.
I can't remember if he showed up in Rebels.
I don't think he was in. I don't think he was in Rebels.
I can't think of it.
I don't think he was. But looking at like he feels unkillable. Like he survives.
He's definitely
thing.
Not dead now either. Yeah.
We'll see.
He had a little beeper on his chest. Why would they linger on the little beeper on his chest?
That is very true.
If you look at the spike, it's only like 3 inches deep. Yeah, I watched it again to check, and I'm like, oh, he's not dead. He definitely just rolled
who
away.
That's beeping to, right? That's his fucking droid buddy. That's why he's like, Cad Bane, I'm here to assist you.
That'd be great.
Dude. Yeah, I love that they acknowledged the history between Cad Bane and Boba as well.
Yeah,
and then Boba's like, "You're an old man."
Yeah, because Cad Bane wasn't he rivals before that with Jango Fett already?
He knew him when Boba was like a kid, like before he even had his armor.
He's also like an alien that has like long ass fucking life too. So
I believe he trains Boba Fett, but that was in an unreleased season of Clone Wars that there's a whole season that you can watch animatics for. So I guess this is Filoni going, it's canon, by the way, that story that I wrote, because I'm pretty sure Cad Bane shoots Boba Fett in the head, and I might be wrong here, in the helmet and leaves him for dead as a kid. And then this is the next time they see each other after that. That big dent in his helmet, I believe,
Oh shit,
was Cad Bane in this unreleased story.
Oh, that would be so cool.
So that whole exchange, it's a testament to the writing, because even if you didn't know all this stuff, it was so good. But the fact that Filoni was like, yeah, it's all real. Okay, that's actually what happened. Maybe we'll get to see that someday. You never know.
I even like that. Even if you don't know all that, like you could just at least assume that, like, oh, they're both bounty hunters. They make sense that they would have, run into each other at some point or another.
All the time, yeah.
Yeah, and like the whole thing with that was in Clone Wars, Boba Fett's in like two different things. One was he ambushes Mace Windu and Anakin because he's like, you killed my father, prepare to die. And then wasn't the other one, he has a whole bounty hunter team? Like he gets to lead a team and he's just like a little kid still. I forget who followed him, but yeah. Wasn't it the bounty hunters that were working with the Jedi for a bit? Like they helped protect the town. I don't remember.
I just remember him showing up at some point and me going like, oh, cool. I guess Boba was like a bounty hunter for a while, like even when he was a kid.
Yeah. I think one thing I was sad about not seeing was, of course, this being, we see two big bounty hunters, but they're like more of the post, like Clone Wars and Disney Star Wars and stuff. We don't get the classics. We don't get Street Mummy and Janitor Lizard. Where's Dengar and Bosk? Like I wish we got to see them at a certain point, because I feel like that. I mean, that's also more potential season 2 stuff, but
maybe some other time.
Yeah. One last thing with it too was, that final fight was crazy, and also Danny Trejo is now officially in Star Wars, which is also fantastic.
Amazing. That was so funny.
That was great.
He seems like the perfect person to cast for a Rancor trainer.
Yeah, I do think the Boba Fett riding the Rancor reminded me a lot of the, I don't remember seeing the animated version, but the Ralph McQuarrie concept of Boba Fett riding, was it the Mythosaur? He rides like some creature, and it just reminded me of that, because it's like he's done that before, not like the bantha, but he's ridden creatures, and it always seemed like a cool thing, because it's like this Western looking character who's just like on the equivalent of a horse, but it could probably kill you also. That was really amazing to watch, personally. But did you guys have anything else for this arc?
Nah, I think overall I enjoyed this entire season. It's just maybe with the very separate storylines of like the Sand People, the Mandalorian, and then the Boba Fett story itself, like it might feel a little bit disjointed, but
yeah,
I still overall enjoyed my time watching it for sure.
Definitely.
I'd have to say as well, the whole thing felt weird and experimental in a way that I really enjoyed. And while I've said it before, it didn't always land. It's a nice indication of where we can go with these stories. So I'm very happy to see it's like, okay, Mandalorian's going to be tight. Everything's going to be fleshed out. And then these side stories can be a little more strange. I want to bring up one more thing. Connections are also key, I think, now in this franchise. Naboo Starfighter has to be Obi-Wan's. I honestly believe that's going to be a big element, is that's where it comes from, is he flies it to Tatooine, and that's why it's sitting there in the desert, and then the Jawas pick it up.
Think of that.
Did he?
I think he's going to. I think this show is going to start bridging a lot of things together. And, Cad Bane showing up, I don't think is a mistake as well, and Ezra and Ahsoka. There's a lot of things here that I think we can start to see, and Obi-Wan's going to tie them together, and I'm excited for that.
Did Obi-Wan take? Wait, so I mean, for sure that was Padme's Naboo Starfighter, right?
No, what I'm saying is because he was so friendly with the people of Naboo, because he knew Padme personally. When he was being hunted down, this is my own theory, I think he goes there, he hijacks one of those ships, because they say it's like this custom machine that can go into hyperspace without, any help for long distances, which X-Wings can do too, but not even as much as these Naboo starfighters could. So it's the perfect ship to get away in and try to flee, from the Inquisitors that are trying to hunt him down.
Oh, that actually
Yeah,
is
I
really
mean, that was the
interesting.
whole selling point that the mechanic had of like this thing can go light speed
Yeah.
without a docking
Yeah.
ring.
Which, I mean, that's our next Star Wars show. Is Obi-Wan is going to be May 25th,
Mhm.
which I was shocked. I was thinking it would be like
That's a
May
lot
4th.
sooner than I thought. Yeah.
Which I think it's not May 4th because I don't know if Moon Knight will last that long, but I feel like there's potentially either that or a different Marvel show might be like finishing off at that point, and then they're like, well, they have something constantly going to
Exactly.
keep something.
Exactly.
So it's like either Moon Knight or something else that's going to be taking majority of May, which is why Obi-Wan starts at the end there and not the beginning.
It's also like the anniversary of New Hope coming out, I believe.
Oh, okay.
It's
Oh,
It's the
okay.
same day, so it's like 40 or I can't remember.
20 years of Lord of the Rings and 40 years of Star Wars. What a
I
great
know, right?
time. And then Obi-Wan, we're gonna get more of Tatooine, so see more of Tatooine, and then potentially other planets, because they did say Anakin will be there,
Yeah.
or Darth Vader will be there, and I doubt he'll be on Tatooine, so I'm assuming it'll be some other locations for sure. And then Ahsoka, we get the hints there, and we already knew, like, it. You could tell by the end of Rebels, it's like Ahsoka is gonna go with Sabine, and they already cast Sabine, so it's very
Yeah.
much like, oh, we're getting Thrawn, and they just cast Thrawn, I believe. I haven't looked who it is, but I'm pretty sure they got him and Ezra, and we're gonna get finally that follow up of where did the space whales take you guys, and
Yeah.
like what's going on there, and Mandalorian season 3. I predicted this at the end of Mandalorian season 2, which was he's gonna go to Mandalore and do some shit there and probably reclaim things. And this seems like that's the start of it for sure. We'll get Bo-Katan and them in it, and I'm sure we'll get more of the Smith and whatnot. But I'm imagining a lot more potential politics in this one, just as a guess. And did you guys have anything on those before? Just one of the final thing was just potentially a season 2 of Boba Fett, but anything on Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Mandalorian season 3?
Nah, not really. Just I guess as with everything, I am interested to see what happens going forward, but I don't know. Like you said, it seems like Disney always has something going on at any given time, so it's hard to be like super excited for everything. It's just like, yeah, I'll give it a watch.
Yeah.
For me, the big thing that I'm looking for out of Obi-Wan, I honestly don't care what kind of story they tell. I just need a single episode that's almost entirely a Clone Wars flashback in live action.
Oh my god!
If they're gonna get Hayden, we need to see them both wearing the armor in their costumes, and they need to have a little adventure. And I'm saying, Cad Bane could show up because now they got the actor and the makeup, and it's all set up. Why not have a little side story where you just kind of show their relationship? Because I think there's a lot of people who still don't see the animation as fully like for adults or fully canon, even though it is. So the more they start to pull these things in from the animated shows, the more people will go, well, I should probably just watch those because it's the same people working on them or who made them. And yeah, I have to suffer through the Jar Jar episode, but there's so much good stuff there, kind of legitimizes it. And I feel like a lot of things, Fallen Order, the games, the novels have started to legitimize Rebels and Clone Wars in a way that is really solid. So let's fingers crossed. That's my only thing that I want.
Live action Rex and Cody.
Yes, please.
Oh
in
my
fact,
god.
Tamara Morrison's just doing the voiceover, and it's just, oh my god. Yeah.
Not only he could lend his likeness. I mean, they're going to be using the de-aging. The de-aging thing we've already seen in Marvel films is so good because it's the actual actor. So now you got Cad Bane, you got Tamura being all the clones and voicing them, and you've got Obi-Wan Hayden. Come on.
I can imagine that, just the credits of that episode. It's just as like Ewan McGregor, Hayden Christensen, Tamara Morrison,
just 20 of them.
Just like,
yeah, exactly.
Be great.
I want this so bad now.
Right. And then speaking of Mandalorian, Boba Fett season 2, like we're looking at, of course, a very long roadmap here because, okay, Obi-Wan's in May. I'm pretty sure Andor is going to come out by the end of this year. Finally getting that Rogue One prequel.
I forgot about that.
Exactly. Yeah. And we're expecting Ahsoka, which is getting a lot of casting, so that could potentially be 2023. Mandalorian season 3, and then we still have Lando. We still have Acolyte, the Bad Batch season 2. So there's a lot of stuff, not to mention all the other Marvel stuff they're still doing. So each of these takes turns, and how long this is going to take. Like, we
Right.
don't even know how many, will it be like 2 years or something before Mandalorian season 3? Like, it's all these questions. And for Book of Boba Fett, do you guys see a season 2 potentially happening?
I don't think they're going to do one. Just because I think Boba Fett is now a character that they can use in the universe. They fleshed him out. They gave him his little backstory. It's now canon. You know, he's alive and who he is. So now, just like with Mandalorian being pulled into his show, he's going to be pulled into all the other shows, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. This felt like it was like a one-shot, one-off, like side story thing. And yeah, now that people are more familiar with this version of the character, they could just bring him in to cameo into future movies if they want to do that, or yeah, Mando season 3 or Ahsoka, like anything. Like it makes more sense to just, if they're going to bring Boba back in at another time, it would be as a cameo. And I would not be against a Book of Boba Fett season 2. I just think it's not super likely.
Okay. I would like to see a season 2, but it's only because of the bounty hunter aspect of everything. Not necessarily his. I mean, I would like to see more of his growth on Tatooine, just to see the progress being made. I mean, it'll be cool to see like other, Mandalorian, other characters come back, and each time they come back, you see more development and you see more happening. But also, like, Cobb Vanth becoming a Cyberman. He's also, they're turning him into a millennial, which is crazy. I can't believe they could do that. But the other bounty hunters, like I was saying, Dengar, Bosk, Forlum, Zuckuss, and all those guys, like IG. I mean, I don't know if they're
We did get to see an IG unit.
IG 14, it was IG 11, right?
11, yeah.
That's true, yeah.
Which 88 is, of course,
the famous one.
Yeah, and I don't know if they wiped out all of his copies yet, because I mean, you do that, you fight one of them as Dash Rendar and like Shadows of the Empire and stuff, but like, God, it was a fun boss fight. But like, all these bounty hunters, I'm pretty sure are alive. I haven't read that whole War of the Bounty Hunters shit. I don't, like I said, I don't read the Marvel Star Wars stuff, but just seeing potentially like Dengar, in Clone Wars, he was voiced by Simon Pegg, and just imagining, you could,
oh my gosh,
get Simon Pegg to play him in real life.
That would be great.
That'd be fantastic. And of all the bounty hunters, I'm pretty sure he is the closest relationship to Boba Fett.
It's him and Bosk.
Yeah, and like they just to see that kind of stuff, that would be so much fun, because they're all feared and all are known for certain things, and just to see that kind of expansion, which, if they don't do it in Boba Fett, I'm very curious as to where then they would show up. Would it be Mandalorian season 3 or something like that? Would it be like, oh, hey, the Imperials are still out there and they're going, like, actually, you know what? Mandalorian season 3, you know what I think is going to happen? Moff Gideon is going to be part of the Republic, or
absolutely.
Part of he's going to be like, oh yeah, I work for them now until
I'm a defector.
Yeah. But yeah, so I just want to see what they can do with the other bounty hunters and where they would show up, and that's the only reason. That's the main reason I'd want a season 2. But if not, I just want to know where and when we finally get to see them again, if they're still alive, and if they're not alive, where did they die? Give us that at least too. Whether it's comics or something, I'm not sure. But all right, I think that. Oh, last thing, the theme for Boba Fett was pretty fucking awesome.
Yes, sir. Can we? Okay, I'm glad you brought this up, because a lot of people came up to me and said, "Man, I really disliked the version at the end of the show," and I'm like,
where they say Fett.
Why? Because, and I think this is something that's just like, you either have heard of this before or you haven't. But to me, I always saw it as a drinking song. So that at the end, when they actually say his name, it's like they're no longer singing their little sea shanty, their little pub song. They're singing a song to him. He's become legend in this town. And that's a song. And I kind of got that cue from at Galaxy's Edge in Oga's Cantina. There's a drinking song there that you can sing along with. I won't say too much because I want people to experience it for themselves. But there's a little little Easter egg within that drinking song that's very funny.
I don't know if I heard it when I was there.
I know it's actually very hard to hear all the music when you're there for one session, which is really interesting as well. We can talk about that some other time. Galaxy's Edge is a whole
So
incredible thing. But yeah, so when they started seeing his, I can, you know, envision in my head they're clanking their mugs together and like, oh, Boba Fett saved me, even though the Rancor blew up my whole fruit stand. You know,
the King Kong Rancor.
Yeah, so that I loved it.
Yeah, very much so. God, it is something I can listen to on my own too. Like that's what these themes have been doing. Like Mandalorian's theme is phenomenal to say the least. It's like it brings the Ennio Morricone vibes.
Yeah,
each time I listen to it, and this is a different version. It actually brings I don't know, the vocals remind me of like what kind of background it has, but it definitely gives me vibes of something. I just don't know what it is, but it's great either way. But either way, that has been our talk on the Book of Boba Fett. Andreas, thank you so much for joining us for this. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, I really enjoyed myself. I can talk about Star Wars for days and hours.
I bet. And of course, this is Sutro Sidetalk. It is available on all podcast platforms. If you can subscribe on whatever you're listening to, if it's Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star review. If it's Spotify, just rate us on there because those ratings are available there now. And of course, we're doing this on video too, so it's on YouTube. So if you can like and subscribe, that would be fantastic. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Sutro Sidetalk. TikTok coming eventually. I'll let you guys know when it's back up and going. You could follow James on Twitter and InvaderJim124. You could follow me on Twitter at GoGoComzilla. Andreas, is there anywhere people you would want people to follow you at?
I'm an enigma.
Gotcha. All right, just checking. And of course, we'll be back next week with Demon Slayer, the Entertainment District. And I think the week after will be a Ted Lasso, Rick and Morty episode. I'm going to try to get people on for Demon Slayer, 1 or 2, maybe. We'll see, because I know a lot of people watch it. So we'll see what can happen. No promises, of course, though. But until then, we will catch you guys next week. So long.
Thanks for listening.